February is Black History Month. It's a time to celebrate how African Americans have contributed to our nation's history. As
KRCG 13's Dick Preston reports, Mid-Missourians do not have to travel very far to find a unique part of that history.
They're a striking part of the Lincoln University campus. Statues of black soldiers who served in the Civil War. They represent what sociologist, author, and activist W.E.B. Du Bois called Lincoln's romantic history.
He was referring to the African-American soldiers and their white officers who were fighting in the Civil War, who were learning to read and learning to write around campfires, which was illegal, and decided to put forth some funds and sacrifice and made a commitment to start an institution.
Richard Baxter Foster, a second lieutenant with the 62nd U.S. Colored Infantry, collected money from the group's officers to set up a school. Foster went to St. Louis with that in mind, but white church leaders weren't too interested in black education. That's why the Soldiers' School ended up in Jefferson City.
And Jefferson City, interestingly enough, had thought, well, the war is going to come to an end, so the city fathers decided, well, black people are going to need to go to school.
Those city fathers ended up creating Lincoln Institute on the site now occupied by Simonson Ninth Grade Center. Many of those early supporters were German immigrants, including Joseph Rieger, the founding pastor at the Central Evangelical Church, now the Central United Church of Christ.
These folks were very motivated for social justice and for racial justice, and they were subsequently abolitionists. And that was difficult in Jefferson City because there were many slaveholders in Jefferson City at that time.
Scholars and historians interested in Lincoln's unique history come here to the Inman Page Library. That's where Richard Foster is remembered as Lincoln's first leader and where his many letters are preserved.
All of his letters that we have in the archives document the turmoil he was going through to decide if he wanted to be on this side of history or the other side of history. And we're grateful that he decided to be on this side of history.
Lincoln's unique history doesn't end there. Lloyd Gaines was an LU graduate who in 1935 was prevented from entering the law school at the University of Missouri. Missouri offered to pay his tuition out of state.
That meant, travel, room and board, all those other things the student had to take care of, and he just couldn't afford that. He could afford to, in his own state, go to University of Missouri, but the state law didn't permit that.
The case went to the U.S. Supreme Court, and the High Court ruled in Gaines's favor. A similar incident led to Lincoln becoming the first historically black college or university to establish a journalism school. After the Brown versus the Board of Education decision, Lincoln University became integrated. Lincoln's history is a key piece of black history, but more than that.
American history is black history. A lot of folks don't connect the dots between the both, but if you look at the country, how it was built, and the wealth, how it was started, slavery, and all that was involved, and so African Americans were there from day one.
And you don't have to go very far to learn about that vital part of U.S. history. Dick Preston, KRCG 13 News.
The Supreme Court decision on the Lloyd Gaines case opened the way for the monumental Brown versus Board of Education ruling that integrated the nation's public schools.